All right, good morning and welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. All right, quick reminder, this show does not run on freedom fumes alone. So if you're watching me on Rumble, smash that green $ during the show to drop a Rumble rant. It's like tongue-tied. It's like tossing me a cold one my way, keeps the vibes high and the mics on. And if you want to go all in, well, then click that subscribe for just $5 a month. Your support helps me fight the good fight. All right, folks, apologies for being late this morning. Just running slow. It's one of those days, where you like call the boss and you're like, hey, running behind a few minutes. And they're like, what's going on? You're like, just nothing in particular. I'm just running behind a few minutes. So that's what's going on today. Remember, tomorrow, I'm not here. Gone. I won't be here Thursday or Friday either. We'll be back next week, which I believe is December, right? Yeah, December 1st. We'll be back. We're taking off for Thanksgiving. I hope you guys have a very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy time with friends and family. Don't argue too much about politics. It is not that important, okay? Like, don't destroy families. That's crazy. But we'll be back tomorrow. I'm sorry, next week, and with another bill review. And we've got some new things coming up. The third, as I've been talking about lately, I've got a new series coming up on the 3rd. It will be every Wednesday. That's going to be our, what did I title it? I didn't have that note prepared on me. There it is. Yeah. I'm not used to saying it just yet, so I've got to remember. I've got to say it a bunch of times so that I remember. On December 3rd, my new guest host, Christina Lucas, will be joining me for something we call the Human Frequency Series. We are going to take this gap that is between politics and culture and emotional intelligence, lived experience, and relational insight, and we're going to bring them together. That's the goal. So look forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. And by the way, Christina is not a libertarian, so that could be fun. That could make for some fun conversations. On December 8th, at 8 p.m., we're really getting out of the ordinary here. That will be the start. That will be the kickoff of another series, Dad Talk Roundtable. I really wanted to come up with a cooler name, and maybe I'll ask AI and be like, yo, give me some, here's what we're doing. Give me some cooler names. And so we'll see. If you have any ideas for a cool name, then drop them in the comments. I'd love to see them. Because honestly, I'm 47. I'm not cool anymore. And one of these days, my son's going to find out that kind of never was. Way it is. Way it goes. Anyway, I'm going to get dads together monthly, the second Monday of every month, and we're just going to discuss various topics from the perspective of men, husbands, and fathers. That's right. It's our way of raising dad voices. And we're just going to talk about things. We're not going to talk about politics. We'll probably talk a lot about culture. We'll just kind of see what people are talking about, or if there's something that's kind of one of us is really want to discuss, then we'll discuss that. And the idea is that dads and men and young men, old men, middle-aged men, husbands, fathers, so on and so forth, they will tune in and walk away with better insight than before the show, right? Like by the end of the show, you have more insight. And hopefully we can do our part to raise men, not raise them like, as in children raise them, but raise the voices of men. That's our goal. So look forward to that. That's going to be a lot of fun. I actually am very excited about that. May not seem like it right now, just because, still 7:50 in the morning. Okay, let's get on to it. What are we talking about today? Well, I'm hopefully going to weave a bit of a narrative today that will suggest that, I've talked to some people, and depends on who you talk to, whether or not the 2026 midterms are going to go in favor of the Democrats or in favor of Republicans. I currently see what I think is the writing on the wall that it's going toward Democrats. So today's episode is going to be just a little bit more information that I think is going to play into the Republican Party losing in 2026. Now, is it going to be a bloodbath? I don't know. I'm not that astute at politics that I can make that kind of prediction, but I am predicting that the Republicans are going to lose in the midterms. So let's start with this story about James Comey and Letitia James. So let me put that up on the screen here for you so that you guys can see it. Where we go here? There we are. Boom. All right. Federal judge dismisses Comey and James indictments, saying Trump's U.S. attorney appointment was illegal. Well, that's interesting. I know what it is. I know. We just read the headline. All we need to know is federal judge dismisses. We can just do what MAGA loves to do and go, oh, it's just them liberal judges. They just got too much power. We need to give it all to Trump. Right? Like that. That's kind of how the conversation sounds. May not be exactly what they say, but it's kind of how it sounds. So let's read what's going on here. On September 20th, President Donald Trump announced that he had picked Lindsay Halligan, a former Trump defense lawyer with no prosecutorial experience. I promise I can read and I can pronounce words. To replace Eric Siebert as the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia. Trump was displeased with Siebert because he was not inclined to prosecute two of the president's nemesis, former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Halligan showed no such reluctance, delivering a perjury and obstruction indictment of Comey 3 days after taking office and a mortgage fraud indictment of James 2 weeks later. Going on, it says, why is this? These ads off here. On Monday, a federal judge dismissed both of those indictments without prejudice after concluding that Halligan had been illegally appointed. Those decisions do not put an end to the criminal cases against Comey and James, since the Justice Department can refile the charges. But the grounds for dismissal reflect the grudge-motivated nature of both cases, which drove Trump and Halligan to take shortcuts that doomed the indictments. What shortcuts would we be talking about here? Here's the lay of the land. On January 20th, Jessica Aber, who was the prior the prior appointee, she resigned. And so then Eric Siebert was temporarily appointed, and his appointment would have expired on May 21st because their interim appointment is limited to 120 days. On May 9th, district judges voted for him to remain until an official appointment was made. However, you have this burning problem that Siebert was like, yeah, I'm not really inclined to prosecute Comey or James. Trump doesn't like this. He pressures Siebert to resign because he's basically refusing to prosecute both of them. So then they appoint Lindsay Halligan under the assumption that the clock, the 120-day clock, would restart. But it didn't. And so if you dig into the details, basically everybody that looked at it said, no, you don't just get to restart the clock. The moment the first interim appointment is made, that's when the clock starts. End of story. Now, you might get that extension with the judges voting to extend it, but by reappointing somebody else, you don't restart the 120-day clock. Now, what's the importance about this? What is the importance here? I want you to think about something. I want you to set aside what you think about their guilt, but I want you to consider the names of people like Anthony Fauci, Merrick Garland, Alejandro Mayorkas, and other Biden-era officials whom we were led to believe Trump might go after. Has he? No, he hasn't went after them. Has he been successful at anybody that he's went after? Also no. It seems like, everybody talks about this like 4D chess, like, oh, it's like 4D chess, 54D chess, whatever. It almost feels like there is a 4D chess, but it's not going in favor of MAGA. It almost feels this way, like the 4D chess is being played against them, and they keep falling for it because they're like, oh, yeah, we're going to go get this person. We're going to get this person. They're going to be held accountable. And then nobody's ever held accountable for one reason or another. And then the Trump administration seems to never be, like, MAGA doesn't seem to be going, wait a minute. All of these names, like, what have you delivered? Have you delivered anything? I mean, we didn't even get anything with the Epstein files. Remember that? We had a big, huge fight. First, it was, all right, we're going to release the Epstein files. Then Pam Bondi come out, and she's like, okay, we gathered up all these influencers. Here is phase 1. For the record, we have not yet received phase 2. Phase 1 implies there is more to come. You don't go out and get, say, hey, we're going to set up phase 1. And then, later say, well, there really is no phase 2. We thought there might be, but there wasn't. Like, it was all a ruse, I think. And Pam Bondi basically lying through her teeth because, like, people tried to call her out, and she was like, well, they were like, you said that the files were on your desk. And she's like, well, what I technically said was the files are on my desk to review. Oh, okay. But you guys keep promising that you're going to deliver results at the same time that you're saying, well, the files are on my desk to review. And that's just a strange thing to say anyway. Like, I want you to think about this. I've got paperwork on my desk over here. Ask me which pieces of paper that I haven't actually just kind of scanned over and looked at and have some semblance of what they're about. All of them. I've scanned all. I have an idea. I got a couple bills over there, and I got some other paper that I got to sort through and do some things with. But I've already went through them and looked at them, and I kind of got a gist of what they're about. So it seems weird that you're going to be like, yeah, I've got all these files, and I haven't even taken a peek to take a look. I have no idea what's in them. But I'm going to tell you that phase 2 is to come. I'm going to get these influencers together. We're going to make a big deal of it. Everybody's going to get excited, and then we're not going to deliver, and I'm just going to make excuses. And MAGA just keeps accepting it, right? Charade after charade. Speaking of charades, now we're on to the next charade. What charade is that? Well, you got Senator Mark Kelly. The other day, I showed you guys this video that had Senator Mark Kelly and several other people who had prior have backgrounds in intelligence and the military. And they basically came out and they were, it was a stupid PSA. And they were like, well, you don't have to follow illegal orders. Like, yes, every military member already knows this. You don't need to tell us. We're very familiar. Or, I was familiar with it in the military. It's like basic training 101 in a sense. You go to basic training, you're doing your physical training, but you also have all this other training that's instructional, that's in a classroom. And they instructed us, you are not, you should not follow illegal orders. Now, what constitutes an illegal order? That's a different question, conversation for another day. But here's this ABC video, and then we're going to go to Dad TV here real quick, and we're going to play this video, and then we're going to see what the hubbub is all about with Mark Kelly. We're going to kind of see what's going on now. We know what he did. He came out with a video that said, don't give up the ship. Don't follow illegal orders. The president, they kind of insinuated that there were illegal orders. They didn't specify which ones, okay? And a lot of people were like, oh, my God, treason and sedition and all these other terms. So let's play this clip here and let's see what we got.
The Pentagon is threatening to court-martial Arizona Democratic Senator Mark Kelly after he took part in a video last week urging troops to defy any illegal orders coming from the White House. The agency says it's looking at possible breaches of military law by Kelly, who served as a fighter pilot for the U.S. Navy. Let's bring in our congressional correspondent, Jay O'Brien, for more. So, all right, tell us, I guess, first of all, what exactly is the Pentagon saying here?
Yeah, and this is the strongest step we've seen so far, Kira, of the White House trying to hit back against this video that drew the president's ire. He said that those members of Congress who engaged in this video committed sedition, and that's something that Republicans on Capitol Hill largely backed him up on. And in this statement from the Department of Defense, they say that there are, quote, serious allegations of misconduct. They point out that the lawmakers who engaged in that video possibly could have violated, and this only applies to Kelly because he is a retired naval commander. It doesn't apply to the other lawmakers in this video who have either intelligence backgrounds or a different way their military service ended. But, quote, the Uniform Code of Military Justice prohibits actions that, quote, interfere with the loyalty, morale, good order, and discipline of the armed forces. And the allegation that the DOD makes here is that this video may have done that and could open Kelly up to a possible court-martial. The reality here is, Kira, though, I just went back through the video again because it was in the headlines all last week, just to kind of walk you through what Kelly said on tape in the video. All he says in that video, and I'll read you the quotes from him, are, quote, "You all swore an oath," referring to active duty members of the United States military. And then he goes on to say, quote, "Our laws are clear. You can refuse illegal orders." And then he says, "Your vigilance is critical." That is largely the extent of what Mark Kelly says. And so the argument that the DOD is making here is that that could violate the Uniform Code of Military Justice, just those statements alone. We have not heard back from Kelly yet today. We have asked his office for their reaction to all of this. But previously, he has said, just as recently as this weekend in posts directed at President Trump, that he won't be intimidated from doing his job, Kira.
All right, Jay O'Brien, appreciate you.
All right. So that's kind of what's going on. Here's what, let's put this up on the screen here real quick. So here is the social media for the Department of War. Here's what they put out. Okay, so they put out a quick statement. Let me get my window back up here. All right, so they said, the Department of War has received serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, USN, retired. In accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice and other applicable regulations, a thorough review of these allegations has been initiated to determine whether further actions, which may include a recall to active duty for court-martial proceedings or administrative, let's switch that over there real quick, administrative measures. This matter will be handled in compliance with military law, ensuring due process and impartiality. Further official comments will be limited to preserve the integrity of the proceedings. The Department of War reminds all individuals that military retirees remain subject to the UCMJ for applicable offenses and federal laws, such as 18 U.S.C. 2387, prohibit actions intended to interfere with loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces. Any violations will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. All service members are reminded that they have a legal obligation under the UCMJ to obey lawful orders. That's funny. That's exactly what they said in the video. They just used different words. They said you have a duty to disobey unlawful orders, which is basically saying only obey the lawful ones. Anyway, going on, to obey lawful orders, and that orders are presumed to be lawful. A service member's personal philosophy does not justify or excuse the disobedience of an otherwise lawful order. Okay? So there's a lot of words there to say we're looking into it. That's basically what it is. They're going to look into it. Is anything going to come out of it? Doubt it. Mark your, here, look. All right. Now we're timestamp this. Nothing is going to come of this. Nothing. They're going to look into it, and they're going to perhaps pursue something. And the end result will be nothing happens to Senator Mark Kelly. Why is that? Because he hasn't done anything wrong. I mean, I want you to think about what it says in the Department of War's own social media post. Let's go back to that real quick, okay? Let's go back to that. It says that they're citing the UCMJ, the USC, I'm sorry, not UCMJ, USC 2387, prohibit actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order. Do we see any disloyalty from that video? Did anybody reasonably watch that video and honestly say, man, I bet this is going to disrupt the loyalty of the United States soldiers? No. Which soldiers are really going to a PSA to determine what they should do? Probably none. So on any significant scale, it was just a dumb video. That's it. There was nothing, like nobody's like, man, I promise you, just from my own personal experience, we're not going and listening to senators or even, 3 or 4 senators and saying, I bet they're right. I bet they got my back. I better go do this. I better go do this action. No. Nobody. Now, if you see an action or you're given an order that you believe is unlawful, then you might take action on the grounds that, hey, this isn't right. But you're not taking your orders from a video of Democrats, what maybe was just baiting Trump. I don't even know. But it was all nonsense. And so, yes, service members have a legal obligation to obey lawful orders. They also have a legal obligation to refuse unlawful orders. There is nothing wrong with a senator coming out, whether they have prior military experience or not, and reminding soldiers of this. There's also nothing wrong with them coming out and saying, I think some of these orders that you've been given are illegal. Okay, but which ones? You're not giving us any. So it's just like you're basically leaving it fully in the hands of U.S. soldiers. They have to make all of the decisions there. They're deciding which orders might not be legal, right? Lawful. They might be unlawful. Which one? Why they might be unlawful. And then, is this something that I think I can refuse and won't end up badly for me? That's an awful lot of choices for soldiers to have to make. So I don't think this video in any way demonstrates any disruption to the military whatsoever. And I said the other day on the show that I think it was just garbage propaganda. It's just a dumb PSA. Like, nobody's following. If any soldier was considering following it, which I don't think they are, but if there were any that were considering it, I would advise them, as somebody who's not a lawyer and who you should probably listen to even less than a senator, but I would advise you, number one, none of those people in that video are going to have your back. Period. Number two, it's a tough hill to climb, because if you believe something is unlawful, you're literally going against the whole entire government. Good luck. It better really, really, really be clear. Like, if you grabbed any person that you could find, then you might say, hey, here's this action. And they could say, oh, wow, that's terrible, without too much ambiguity. It's a tough hill to climb. Now I'm not suggesting that, the government should get away with unlawful things, and I believe that they are doing unlawful things. I have said, and I maintain, that all the bombings of the Venezuelan boats are unlawful. They're illegal. I think they're acts of war. Now, whether or not the drone operators are in a position to contest that is an entirely separate matter. Okay? That's all the point that I'm making. I'm not suggesting that they should necessarily do it. That's a decision that they will have to make. They will have to decide, are they okay with what I consider to be an act of war? killing somebody that has not received any, at least that we know of, any level of due process. Now, perhaps there is some due process that's happened behind the scenes, and the drone operators are familiar with it. I don't know. I do not know what the protocols are. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't think that this is going to go anywhere, because we've already seen where even some of the efforts have went. Now, going back to this whole Comey and James dismissal, I want you to know that it was dismissed without prejudice. So that means the government can bring these charges back. Those charges weren't necessarily dismissed themselves. It was the court case that was dismissed on the grounds that Halligan was simply not, he does not have the standing, the authority to bring those charges. So it has to be somebody else. So the question is, can the Trump administration find somebody else? Well, what does it say that they couldn't get this procedure right in the first place? What does it say that they've been unable to go after people like Anthony Fauci and other people that they suggested they would? They haven't. Nobody has been charged with anything. The Epstein files, from a layperson, from just a regular average citizen perspective, that would seem to be a slam dunk case. Epstein was a known trafficker. We've got his madam behind bars. This seems to be like, you find somebody that went to the island, you have evidence that they engaged in a particular activity, video evidence, written evidence, testimony, something, right? I wouldn't, maybe slam dunk is a little bit strong, but it seems like a pretty strong case, yet we can't get anybody for that. And somehow we're supposed to believe that, I think it was 6 people in this video, they have committed sedition and they're totally going to get in trouble? Please. Come on. Who are you fooling? Now, is Mark Kelly concerned? Well, he's not. In fact, here's what he had to say. Let's go back to Dad TV. We'll see what Mark Kelly had to say in response to this. I think he was on the Rachel Maddow show. Here's his response.
Rachel, I've had a missile blow up next to my airplane. I've been shot down, nearly shot down multiple times. I've flown a rocket ship into space 4 times, built by the lowest bidder. And my wife, Gabby Giffords, meeting with her constituents, shot in the head, 6 people killed around her. A horrific thing. She spent 6 months in the hospital. We know what political violence is, and we know what causes it, too. The statements that Donald Trump made is insightful, incites others. He's got millions of supporters. People listen to what he says more so than anybody else in the country. And he should be careful with his words. But I'm not going to be silenced here. Is it stressful? I've been stressed by, things more important than Donald Trump trying to intimidate me into shutting my mouth and not doing my job. He didn't like what I said. I'm going to show up for work every day, support the Constitution, do my job, hold this administration accountable, hold this president accountable when he is out of line. That's the responsibility of every U.S. senator and every member of Congress. He's not going to silence us.
I mean, the man got a point. He's a Democrat, so there are going to be many things that I disagree with him on. Okay? Plain and simple. But he has a point here. The job of Congress is to be a check and balance on the president. It is to represent the people, if you're in the House. It is to represent the states, if you're in the Senate. It is not to go along and get along with the president. It is the president's job. Let me put myself back on full screen here. It is the president's job to convince Congress that they should pass legislation or do things that will help him follow through on the commitments that he made on the campaign trail. That's the job of Congress. That's the job of the president. And we should expect that they do that job. And so I agree with him. He's completely correct there. Now, would I agree on where the president is necessarily being unlawful or doing things wrong? Maybe. It depends. I mean, the Democrats, they're not going to, I may be kind of siding with them right now, but I have plenty of disagreements. And I think they do some of the same rope-a-dope games that the president is doing here right now. They make a big bunch of, a lot of noise about what they're going to do, how this is bad, and then they don't do anything when they get in power. Which is why I'm a libertarian. Because of Republicans, what they'll do is they'll say, oh, no, we can't have this. This is a bad idea. Don't vote for the Democrats. We've got better ideas. And they sometimes won't even present their own ideas. Or after they lose the fight, once, the fight of a particular issue, then when they get into power, you see that there's zero effort to go back and resolve the issue that they swore up and down was going to destroy our country. I mean, just think about what you're hearing about Obamacare. Republicans are now like, Donald Trump is like, oh, we're going to basically make some extensions on it. We're going to add to it. We're going to continue working with it. The Republicans have never, ever presented an alternative to the Affordable Care Act. All they did was make some verbal complaints, talk about it, and then go along with it. That's all they did. And that's all they seem to be doing with the Democrats in anything. Make a lot of noise, lose, carry on. Great. So I look at it and I say, I don't think anything's going to happen here. I think that Senator Mark Kelly he has no reason to be worried whatsoever. What are they going to do? I think at most he might get a document that basically is a strongly worded letter. That's what he's probably going to get the most. Strongly worded letter. Hey, be careful with your words. It won't even be like a threat. It'll just be like a reminder. Kind of like what he did the video. That's my guess. I'm going to speculate a little bit. I'm going to speculate that he's just going to get a letter that basically says, hey, we reviewed this and it didn't violate the law, but it comes pretty close. Be careful with your words in the future. So we'll see. We'll see what ends up and if I'm correct on this, but that's my prediction. That's the most he's going to get, if anything. So then now I'm like, okay, I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, you've had Comey, you've had James, their dismissal based on grounds that the Trump administration doesn't seem to be managing what ought to be pretty clear procedures. You see, this is the problem. This isn't like some legal fight and you're like, oh, I can see where they made that mistake. You could go in and you can look and say, okay, according to the rules, if we replace this somebody, if we replace this this prosecutor, and then they're just an interim prosecutor until we get an official one, is there anything that suggests that it will start the clock on the 120 days? No. Or they could say, it looks a little sketchy. We better do something that's a little more bulletproof because we want to make sure that we deliver this. But I think it's just all bread and circuses. I think they're just playing games with us. They're just like, oh, yeah, try this. And, if somebody, I'm willing to bet somebody in the background has told Donald Trump, yeah, that's not really going to work. And he's going to say, yeah, try it anyway. Rather than sitting down and saying, what is going to deliver results to the American people? Whatever. And we can argue about who should or should not be prosecuted or why they should or should not be prosecuted. We can have those arguments, and that's fine. But if the Trump administration is going to go out and actually pursue something, we should expect that they only do so if they're going to win or if the chances are in their favor of winning. For me, when I look and I see that your case was dismissed because you overextended yourself on your interim prosecutor, your interim appointment, that tells me that you're being sloppy. And you're being sloppy for one of two reasons. Either you just want to make it look like you're doing something, and then you can pin the blame on somebody else, like, I don't know, liberal judges. Or you just want to look like you're doing something, or you're intentionally sabotaging it yourself. That's the conclusions that I come up with. So let me get into why I think these stories are kind of laying the groundwork for a 2026 win. So let me pull up this other, let's see, where are you here? I got this other article here. Let's pull it up. Where are you? My mouse. There we go. All right. Here's this article from the New York Times from James Carville. It's called Out with Woke, In with Rage. Let's check it out. So we're not even 2 weeks from the government shutdown, and the public conversation on the matter has fled the building. This shows no matter what you believe, there's a simple truth. The shutdown will have zero lasting consequence for next year's midterms. The only thing that will persevere is economic pain, and that's exactly why Democrats won on November 4th. Okay? I mean, think about the wins that they got. Think about, and he talks about it here, Zoran Mamdani. Zoran Mamdani, Abigail Spanberger, Mikey Sherrill, even down ballot Georgia Democrats, all won with soaring margins because the people are pissed. And the people always point their anger at the party in charge. It's true. Rent is out of control. It is. Young people can't afford homes or pay student debt. We're living through the greatest economic inequality since the Roaring 20s. Now, I don't necessarily disagree with everything, but there are problems with the economy. If you go on social media, even MAGA and Republicans are talking about it. There is an economic problem that's not being addressed. You know what? I could probably make this a little bit bigger. Maybe. There we go. How about that? Yeah, I mean, if I'm going to put it up on the screen, you might as well be able to at least read it. Let's see. Maybe more? Can I do more? Yeah, there you go. That's better. All right. President Trump has done nothing to curb the cost of what it requires to take even a breath in America today. The centerpiece promise of his 2024 campaign. The people are revolting, and they have been for some time. I want you to think about this. Why? Like, you can't just rely on, oh, the young kids are coming out, and they just all love socialism. The message still has to be appealing in the reality that they live in. If somebody says rent is out of control, and everybody's like, I don't know, my rent seems fine, then it's not going to work. It only works if rent is literally out of control. If people are having trouble paying their rent and someone comes along and says, I have answers, good or bad, that's enticing. This offers Democrats the greatest gift you can have in American politics, a second chance. It's true. They do need a second chance because they flopped back in 2024. I am now an 81-year-old man, and I know that in the minds of many, I carry the torch from a so-called centrist political era. Yet it is abundantly clear, even to me, that the Democratic Party must now run on the most populist economic platform since the Great Depression. It is time for Democrats to embrace a sweeping, aggressive, unvarnished, unapologetic, and altogether unmistakable platform of pure economic rage. This is our only way out of the abyss. Man, is he correct. If the Democrats want to win in 2026, win bigly, they need to just tap into the economic rage. They need to do exactly what Zoran Mamdani did. They need to offer up charismatic people that are literally going to talk about, here's this economic problem that everybody pretty much agrees is an economic problem, and then they're going to offer their solutions. And when the Trump administration is continuing to not deliver, right, and not just not deliver all of these prosecutions, because that might invigorate his base. That might invigorate the people that he that voted for him. If he was delivering some people like, let's say some people from the Epstein Island, if he delivered like 2 or 3 people, like that were clearly guilty and probably notable names. Like if it's just some random person that like nobody's really ever heard of, I don't know that's going to go very far. But if it's like, I don't want to use any names in particular, but let's just say that there was a notable person, a government official, and we found out that there's evidence tying them to activities on, illegal activities on Epstein's Island. That's going to invigorate the MAGA cohort. That's going to get them going. And they may be willing to deal and tolerate the economic fallout that we're having, right? Prices going up and all that, if they got some wins. But he's not delivering wins there. And he's not delivering economic wins, because that's why Zoran Mamdani won. Now, in fairness to the Trump administration, the situation economically in New York, that did not just come about during President Biden or during President Trump. Like, this has been a long time coming. Zoran Mamdani just happened to be able to tap into it and say, problem, I have answer. Okay? Now, it also helped that New York is pretty left in the first place, so that went toward it. But I think we're going to start seeing some more Zoran Mamdanis. Let's continue on with what Carville had to say here. Just as we did in 2018 and even in 2022, it's all but certain that Democrats will turn out urban and suburban voters in the midterms, specifically the kind of people who vote regularly. At this point, it's a damn near guarantee for our party, and we must continue to surge these voters. What we must also do is build a platform that helps us permanently uproot the Republican advantage in more rural regions. This can be done only with good old-fashioned economic populism, both in message and measure. Just as it was for the Mamdani campaign, raging against the rigged, screwed-up, morally bankrupt system that gave us the cost of living crisis must be the centerpiece of every Democratic campaign in America. Unless you're the top 1%, this touches everybody. Even lifelong Republicans know this economy isn't working. We have to present ourselves as adamantly, even angrily, opposing the system that is preventing younger rural voters from buying homes, jacking up utility bills, and keeping grocery prices at astronomical levels. It is vital that Democrats, with some big old cojones, rail against the unjust economic system that has created these conditions. Otherwise, we will continue to be viewed as part of it. For this to work, we can't get sidetracked on our message. The Republican Party's greatest weapon has always been its uncanny ability to turn us against one another. It cannot be said enough. The era of performative woke politics from 2020 to 2024 has left a lasting stain on our brand, particularly with rural voters and male voters. The term Latinx was despised even by many Latino people. You know, it's funny. I know a good handful of Latino people. Now, most of them are libertarian, and they all say, and these are Spanish-speaking people. Like, they fluently speak English and Spanish. And every one of them that I know, they've hated that term for the longest time. I've seen so many. It seems like most of the people that I see that want to use the term are white people. So weird. Calling folks BIPOC should have never been a thing. I totally agree. That was stupid. BIPOC, which of course stands for Black, Indigenous, People of Color. Okay? Yeah, like, what I think is going to happen if they listen to James Carville here, they're gonna set aside all of this woke stuff, if you will, all of these terms, and they're gonna be like, nope, we got to focus on the economic stuff. If they listen to him, defund the police was a terrible idea. It really was. Like, I agree with it in some sense. I think that there's room to take away some of the goodies that the police has. They don't need to be militarized, right? We don't need to call them out for every, we need to find a better way to deal with, like, mental health issues so that you get the right person for the right job. That way the police just aren't shooting people, because they're not really trained to deal with mental health issues. So underneath the defund the police, there were a lot of real issues that could be addressed. But ultimately it ended up just being take all their money away and no policing. That's kind of how it was viewed. So they needed to do a better job of what they meant by defund the police. But yeah, it was a dumb idea. Polling shows that nearly 70% of Americans think the Democratic Party is out of touch and that it is more interested in social issues than economic ones. Yeah, absolutely. I have been saying this over and over and over. Please focus on economic issues. Whoever, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, please, please, please focus on economic issues. Break it down in simple terms. Now I'm talking to the Libertarians. Break it down in simple terms. Nobody wants to see all your graphs and charts. Nobody wants to hear all your highfalutin language. Nobody cares about how, smart you are in Austrian economics. Just tell people, like, oh, you're having trouble affording bread? Here's the simple answer. That's it. That's what you do. You break it down in simple terms. If the Democrats can do that, they'll be on a good path. Let's see. He goes on to say, we can no longer be a party with a whiff of moral absolutism. We can correct this only by looking toward the future, always in every situation possible, and pivoting to a form of economic rage as our response. With all this rage, we must also have a bold, simple policy plan, one that every American can understand. It's almost can I divulge something? So I just said it has to be simple, talking to the libertarians, and now he's like, yeah, we got to have a simple plan. I didn't really read the full article before the show because I was running a little bit behind. I skimmed it, but I didn't really read it. So, if I'm making arguments that he's making, it's purely coincidental. I know you're not going to believe me, but that's okay. Like, I promise you, I'm not lying. Anyway, in the richest country in the history of our planet, we should not fear raising the minimum wage to $20 an hour, which had a 74% approval rating in 2023. Okay, well, so now we're going to disagree. And we're not going to get into it, but I disagree with this particular prescription here. However, if people are having trouble paying their bills, if people believe that the rich people are getting away with, economic imbalance, right? Like they don't pay their taxes, they don't whatever, right? If people believe that, then they will support $20 an hour minimum wage. It doesn't matter that I disagree with it. What matters is, what can you convince people of? That's what matters, right? And so if you're using this economic rage and saying, man, all these problems that exist, we need to raise the minimum wage to $20 an hour, a lot of people are going to buy into it. And what did I say about Zoran Mamdani? I said, I'll have to dig up the quote wherever I said it. I said, I think his policies will ultimately fail. But in the shorter term, what I expect is that some of his policies will start to look like they're delivering. And then people will go, well, we want more of that. That's how I see it playing out. Because at the end of the day, all you need to secure a win, especially with voters, is a short-term win or the appearance of a win. Hey, we delivered this. It didn't work out in full as we had planned, but that's because we need to go in harder. And how do I know that's going to be the argument? That's the argument about everything the government makes. Oh, education scores are down. Well, we're not paying teachers enough. Schools need more money. We need more administrators, right? Whatever there's a failing, it's, we didn't give it the good old college try. We got to go a little harder. We got to spend a little bit more money. That is always the case. And so if you want to oppose this, it's kind of an uphill battle. You've got to really make the case that, no, these economic ideas are not good. In the long term, they will be more destructive. Here is the alternative. And the truth of the matter is, the Republicans are in power right now. So it's not a matter of, okay, here's the alternative idea. They need to deliver actual, tangible wins. So you've got the Republicans. They're in power. If they don't deliver wins, the Democrats could easily win on the promise of delivering wins. Such the cycle continues. It goes on, it says, we should not fear an America with free public college tuition, which 63% of U.S. adults favored in a 2021 poll, when 62% of Americans say their electricity or gas bills have increased in the past year, and 80% feel powerless to control their utility cost. We should not fear the idea of expanding rural broadband as a public utility. Or when 70% of Americans say raising children is too expensive, we should not fear making universal child care a public good. And darn it, we should not fear that running on a platform of seismic economic scale will cost us the general election. We've already lost enough of them by being afraid to try. The era of half-baked political policy is over. If you're a student of history, the French Revolution is in the American wind. While the stock market soars, Mr. Trump and decades of corrupt and morally bankrupt Republican economic agendas have splintered the very heart of the American economy. The few are getting vastly richer, while a crushing tide drowns the many. Yet, even as Mr. Trump's approval sinks to a low point of his second term, Republicans continue to place their faith in an economy built on pillars of sand. While the people scrape by day after day, This can change. It's time we as the party do too. I mean, he's got a point. He has a point. Now, he doesn't, and I disagree with him on every one of the economic ideas. I disagree on the answer to those economic problems. They are real problems, okay? What are some of the things that he mentioned? He mentioned utility bills. He mentioned broadband. He mentioned raising your children, college tuition, minimum wage. He mentioned all of these things. These are things that people are feeling. And if the Republicans don't start delivering economic wins, then I think they're going to be in for a disastrous 2026. And it's not that I want them to win per se. I just want the American people to be better off. And so for me, if the Libertarian Party could win some elections and deliver some real tangible results to the American people, that'd be fabulous. If they can't do that, how about the Republicans? If they can't do that, how about the Democrats? How about anybody actually deliver to the American people? I just found out that there's conversation about whether or not Doge is really dead or not. Like Doge is like, no, we're still alive. We're saving people money. Okay. I've said it somewhere. I don't know if I said it on the podcast or if I said it in a tweet or a post or something, but I have said the way that people believe that Doge delivered is when I go to do my taxes and I see that I am paying fewer taxes. Otherwise, you're just taking the money and dispersing it elsewhere. You're like, oh, USA aid, they're not, they're squandering the money. They're using it for these weird and maybe even illicit purposes. They're funding things that probably are really just a shell game for something else. Okay, great. Give me the money back. When you stop the money going to that entity, if it just gets redirected elsewhere, then you haven't actually saved me any money. You just keep spending it. I'm still in the same situation that I was in yesterday. Maybe I can't pay my rent. Maybe I'm having trouble buying groceries. Whatever. Deliver some actual wins. And I don't really care who does it. Now, as I said earlier, I think when we're talking about things like prosecuting people, that can only take you so far. But the Trump administration has not delivered on any of them. So you've not delivered on the economy, and you've not delivered on our rage at public officials. What have you delivered exactly? What have we actually received? If I walk up to the average person on the street and I said, I didn't even ask him their political persuasion. I don't ask him whether they support Trump. I just say, tell me how you're better today than you were this time last year or this time 2 years ago. I'm willing to bet that most people would not say, well, they would not have much of an answer. They would say, well, I'm doing about the same, whatever the same means. So for me, I look at it and I say, I've got some friends. They feel confident that come 2026, that MAGA is not going to be hurting, that Trump is not going to, the Republicans are not going to lose bigly, but he is a lame duck. This is the midterms. People are angry. They need a villain. People in power are usually easy villains. I don't see it going for them very well in their favor. Maybe I'm wrong. We'll see. All right, let's go to the live chat here. See what you guys are saying. Got a few comments in there. So Joe says, when the government orders it, it makes it lawful. That's kind of how they're presenting it, right? Of course, he's being tongue-in-cheek here. Just because the government says so doesn't mean it is lawful. But the challenge here, going back to the issue of soldiers following orders, at the end of the day, I think we just need the real conversation that needs to be had is, okay, it was a dumb PSA. It doesn't mean anything. I doubt that very many of our soldiers are going to take that PSA and do anything. So I seriously doubt there's anything to charge Mark Kelly with. And for the very, very small handful of soldiers that might be willing to do something. We just need to warn them, beware, you're on your own. None of the people in that video are going to have your back. None of them. Don't expect it. So if you do disobey an order or you divulge information, you damn well better be right. You better be prepared to get the Snowden treatment. Almost said Eric Snowden, like I was thinking of Eric Siebert. You better be prepared to get the Snowden, Edward Snowden. I kept thinking Eric, and I was like, it is not Eric, but I know it's an E. Edward Snowden. You better be prepared to get that treatment. And if you're not prepared, then maybe you don't do that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, all I said was, it's not even like refusal to act on an order is just insubordination. So there's that. Let's see what else we got. Do. Yep, here's a good one. Take these next 5 days and put on an episode or 2 or 3 and run them in the background. Help DL to get that 3,000 watch hours so that he can start getting super chats and paid memberships. Do me a solid, folks. I'm going to be off for a few days. I'm going to be doing some cleanup and hopefully doing some improvement on the show, making it a little bit better. You know, we're just trying to slowly make it better and better and better. And when we come back, it's going to be awesome. More awesome than it was even today or yesterday. So help a brother out. Go watch some old shows. Check them out. So comment, too, while you're at it. Let's see what else. Larry Sharp says, Larry Sharp's being quoted here, that Democrats have bad ideas, Republicans have no ideas. This is why Mamdani is the mayor of New York. That's true. Now, there's a little bit more, in that particular case, there's a little more to it than that. I mean, New York City is rather blue. Republicans really didn't have much of a chance. But even if you just scan back and you look at the United States as a whole, in many cases, the Democrats have bad ideas and the Republicans have no ideas. The Affordable Care Act is a shining example of that. And that's one of the things that I was screaming about when Obama was presenting it. And he was like, we're going to, 43 million Americans don't have health insurance. We're going to fix that. And I was like, Republicans, what is your idea? And they're like, we got a better idea. And I'm like, what is it? What can the voters support? And they didn't have one. And then when they got into power, did they still have one? Did they have one then? No, they didn't. Do they have one now? No, they don't. Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, that is here to stay. And you can thank Republicans for that. No, don't be mad at the Democrats. They did what they're supposed to do. They came up with an idea, they pushed it, they implemented it. That's what they're supposed to do. Like it or hate it, that's their job. Right? Come up with ideas and see about getting them implemented. Republicans did not, nor were they successful at challenging it. And I've got a sneaky suspicion they kind of wanted it. Let's see. Keith says, NODA for president. That's none of the above. It's always an option. All right. Annie loves the episode title. Wait a minute. Hold on. Am I reading that right? This episode title? Wait a minute. Love the episode title. This episode title is just Random Dad Musings number 44. I don't know if you mean that... I don't know if you mean you love this title or something. I'm a little confused. Maybe there's something in the chat that I missed. Let's see. Let me. Did I miss something? Yeah, I'm not seeing anything, so maybe I missed it. I'm misunderstanding here. That's okay. Sometimes the chat, they're chit-chatting among themselves and whatever else. Quick shout out to Ben, who is watching over on X. He says, good morning, sir. Good morning to you. Let's see. Anybody over on Facebook? Nope. Nobody on Facebook. They might be watching, but they're not saying anything. All right. Well, that's it for today then, folks. That's my episode. Hope you found it at least informative. I don't know if there's anything there to be inspiring, but whether you're watching me live right now or you're watching me later, I want you to drop a comment. Let me know about your thoughts. Did I miss anything? Do I need to offer a correction? Perhaps you just want to be promiscuous with praise. Whatever the case, I'm all ears. But with all that being said, I'm out for today. I will see you come next Monday. Have a good one, folks. Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy your time. Don't spend too much Friday. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, you know, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.